Let's talk about more than 7 moves I'm personally making in my fantasy football leagues before this next week begins. Buys, sells, starts, sits, stashes, and cuts. We got a little bit of something for everybody here. And what I'd like to do today is start off with the cuts and the stashes, but there will be time codes throughout the video for wherever you want to go. Let's start off with the cuts. This segment is hard. I am not going to lie to you. Losing Jaden Daniels in the flock league was almost my 13th reason. Jaden Daniels, you can probably cut him. How small is your league? If you're out there and you're in an 8-team league, 10-team league, probably cut him. If you're in a 12-team league and you have extra bench space, hold on. Let's see what the reports say about how long he'll be out, because he still has a great playoff schedule. He's got the Giants, the Eagles, and the Cowboys. So there's definitely some good potential there if he can come back into the playoffs for the fantasy football season. But for me in the flock league, my entire team is decimated. So I might have to, we only have one IR spot. I have like 5 players injured. I might have to move on from him. And if you're in a similar position, it's going to be tough, but you might have to. For Tucker Kraft, you can move on. It's painful, of course, but he's not coming back this year. There's no doubt about it. Jaden Blue, you can cut. I was very excited to see what he could do in this offense, but this team is just not sold on him. Malik Davis played, and then they decided that they didn't like him so much that they were just going to cut him. So Malik Davis was playing ahead of Jaden Blue, who was inactive, and they just cut Malik Davis. So you can cut Jaden Blue at this point. Samaje Perine, unfortunately, he's got that high ankle sprain. He looked like he was going to be a valuable part of this offense, but high ankle sprain, it's going to be too long to hold on to him. Hassan Haskins is on the IR. Joe Mixon, like we've said all year, if you've been holding on, unless he's a free spot and he costs you nothing, move on from him if you need to use your IR with a different name, because there's no indication that he'll be back. Jaden Higgins, I believed in Jaden Higgins. I really like him as a player. Same thing with Jalen Noel. They're kind of both in the same category. It's funny because the passing attack looked its best in week 8 without Nico Collins when Jaden Higgins and Noel were featured, but they've decided, nope, we'd rather play Xavier Hutchinson. We'd rather play Christian Kirk. So there's nothing you can do with that. Calvin Ridley, even if this offense was good, not sure if he's the wide receiver 1 anymore. It doesn't matter, honestly, because the offense isn't good. At some point, Ricky Pearsall will be back. And then at some point, Brandon Ayuk will be back. Shoot for other upside names if you can. Cooper Kupp, at this point, after trading for Rashid Shaheed, I just don't see the value. You couldn't really start him before that. I don't see how you're going to start him afterwards. It's just a veteran presence in the locker room. So after you've made those cuts, now you'll have the freedom to pick up some stashes before week number 10 begins. I'd like to start with Adonai Mitchell. I know it sounds silly, guys. Really, Adonai Mitchell, you want me to stash him? Well, there's just no clear wide receiver 2 in New York. Outside of Garrett Wilson, you have names like Tyler Johnson, Arian Smith, who's a rookie, Isaiah Williams, John Mechie, Lazard, Reynolds, Irving Charles. Irving Charles sounds like a made-up name. All right, that just sounds like a my player on 2K that's like the pre-entered name. No disrespect to Irving. He's in the NFL. I'm not. But after the Colts made this trade, sending away Sauce Gardner, getting back A.D. Mitchell, I think the Jets really like A.D. Mitchell. Let's be honest. 2nd round pick at some point. Really talented guy. Has no problem getting open. He's just done a bunch of boneheaded moves after he's caught the ball. So I think this is a great chance for a young 23-year-old player, super talented guy out of Texas, to get another chance. In deep leagues, he's worth a stash. All right, so earlier, remember how we talked about how Jaden Blue is just not that guy for the Cowboys as the backup? Well, Phil Maffa is super interesting because he was placed on IR before the season began. However, they're going to bring him off the IR. He is going to be practicing here very soon. The fact that they've cut Malik Davis makes me think he could be back after the bye week. So definitely worth the stash. He is probably going to be the handcuff. After Jaden Blue's a healthy scratch, Malik Davis is waived. He's definitely worth looking at, in my humble opinion, because if anything were to happen to Javonte Williams, he would be a playable name, assuming he's the next guy up. Another move you can make to save your season is benching any Commanders running back. And, it's so painful to talk about the Commanders. They're my team. It's a whole thing. It's not fun. Fantasy's been rough. I have JCM in some leagues, believed in him. Look, you just can't start a Commanders running back. You can't. They go up against the Lions. That's the 3rd worst matchup for your fantasy running backs. The Lions this year have given up the 10th fewest rushing yards per game, 8th fewest total yards per game. I mean, they're a difficult defense to go up against. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, since the breakout game in week 5 versus the Chargers, where we all thought, wow, what could JCM be in the future? Well, it's been nothing but disappointment. Hasn't, averaged, a high yards per carry. It's been about 3. Hasn't been involved in the air. The offense has been terrible, and the offensive line has been awful. It's stacked boxes. Injuries to the wide receiver room haven't helped. Now Jaden Daniels is gone. It's just, I can't think of a single reason to start either of these names, and it's probably going to be a rotation. I don't think JCM has done enough to really just, you know, merit, no pun intended there, the unquestioned touches in this offense. I think it's going to be more of a rotation than we want it to be. That's a bit disgusting in my opinion. So if you can sit all these guys, I'd prefer, especially without Jaden Daniels. I'd rather start names like RJ Harvey and Woody Marks and Kyle Monangai, even if DeAndre Swift plays, Ken Walker, Rashad White, Travion Henderson, and Aaron Jones. I'd rather plug all those guys into my lineup. Another name that I think you should probably be looking at benching, but only if you have a good team and you have another option, is Chris Olave. Olave plays the Panthers. The Panthers defense is legit this year. I mean, guys, Bryce Young just threw for like 114 yards and they won a game last week against the Green Bay Packers. So that Panthers defense is legitimate. 6th worst matchup for your wide receivers. And, 15th against, in passing yards, 13th in total yards. They're middle of the pack as a defense, but that's just more because their offense can't keep their defense off the field. Unfortunately, the reason I don't think you can play Chris Olave is because Spencer Rattler is no longer the starter for this team. All right. Spencer Rattler was starting from weeks 1 to weeks 7. Actually, week 8, I apologize. And in that span, Olave was one of the safest receivers in fantasy football. Didn't have a single game under 10 PPR points. And the first day with Tyler Shuck out there throwing the football, he wasn't terrible, but they just never really have the ball to begin with. They're never on the field. They never can sustain drives. The first game, he has 8.7 PPR points and just 4 targets. Surely you expect the targets to go up, but I just don't trust him. So I'd rather start names like Zay Flowers and Tetairoa McMillan, Wan'Dale Robinson, DK Metcalf, Jordan Addison, Stephon Diggs, Quentin Johnston, Keenan Allen. I'd rather start any of those names over Chris Olave this particular week. If you don't have a better option, look, I get it. You got to do what you got to do. If you don't know, there's a completely free feature on the Flock Fantasy site called the My Teams feature. All you got to do to access it is use my promo code LAND and create a free account. Then you're going to get expert consensus opinion on your league, rankings, recent trades, etc. If you want to sign up for that, again, completely free. This is just me being a good guy. Then check out the link down below. Okay, I'm going to leave my start of the week to the very end of today's video. And what we're going to do next is we're going to go through some buys and some sells. Okay, starting off with the sells. These are the players that I would like to trade away if you're able to, simply because what we're thinking about right now is not about the next couple of weeks. We're thinking about how can I have the best team in the fantasy football playoffs? And all of these players I'm going to talk about today, their schedule is atrocious in the fantasy football playoffs. So why don't we start off with DeAndre Swift? Okay, so DeAndre Swift, since the bye week, was fantastic. He faced Washington, New Orleans, and Baltimore. Well over 18 points per game, has been really good, really effective on the ground, right? 7 yards per carry, 4 yards per carry. Obviously, he missed last week, and we saw Kyle Monangai get involved. Honestly, add Kyle Monangai to this list. I would like to sell both of those guys if I can. Selling Kyle Monangai off the big game against Cincinnati. Everybody's going off against the Bengals, so we shouldn't put too much stock in that. But when you look at the schedule, when it matters the most, DeAndre Swift has one of the worst schedules. He faces Cleveland in week 15, which is one of the best defenses in the NFL. I know it sounds silly because the Browns are bad, but their defense is elite. Their rushing defense is also elite. They also face the Packers in week 16. Packers are one of the toughest defenses to run on. So if somehow you get past those 2 terrible matchups in the playoffs, well, then you get the Niners. It's not even like a great matchup. It's a middle of the pack matchup. So if you can sell these Bears running backs, I think now's the time to do it. I also feel the same exact way about every single Denver running back. So that is J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins is not sexy. He'll be harder to sell. I can definitely agree if you feel that way. But even RJ Harvey, like if you want to sell someone on the idea that, he's going to break out second half of the year and he's going to be the guy, and that very well could be the case. But in the fantasy playoffs, even if he becomes the guy or if Dobbins retains that role, it could be a split backfield, which would be even worse for these guys. But even if one of them is a clear starter, well, the schedule's awful. Green Bay in week 1, Jacksonville in week 2, Kansas City in week 3 of the fantasy football playoffs. 15, 16, 17. Not a single matchup that you're excited about. Not a single matchup that is a plus for the defensive line that you're facing. The Packers' defensive line is no joke. Jags are a great defense against the run. Chiefs, same exact thing. I just do not want to play my Denver Broncos in the playoffs, so be looking for an out if you can with those particular names. Okay, how about we talk about Marvin Harrison? So I think this is the perfect opportunity to sell him. Now, you need to know that he faces Seattle this week. That is not a great matchup. And if you have an opportunity to sell him after the benching of Kyler Murray, which we all love, that's a positive for him. Obviously, Jacoby Brissett is more competent for Marvin Harrison, so that's a positive. We love that. I agree with you if you feel that way. But they play Seattle this week. Their entire secondary is healthy. Seattle's not a good matchup anymore. And then when it matters the most in the playoffs, the Cardinals have terrible matchups. Houston is the worst matchup for your fantasy wide receivers, and that's who they get in round 1. So in round 1, if you're relying on Marvin Harrison, he's going to be lined up against Derek Stingley, excuse me. That's a tough matchup. Then he gets the Falcons. Terrible matchup. If you somehow get past those first 2 weeks, then you get the Bengals. That's a great matchup. We would love to be a part of that. But you got to get to the dance. I'm not sure you're going to be dancing with those first 2 weeks you got to overcome. Next name I'd like to move off of. He was someone that we suggested to sit this week. I also feel as if you should probably try and sell Chris Olave. Yes, Tyler Shuck, we've talked about that. I'm not confident in Tyler Shuck rest of the season. I do think Rattler was better for him, but Shuck's going to be better than he was this week. There's no doubt about that. But again, it's all about the schedule. Even if Shuck is better, even if Rattler was a starter, would you be excited about these matchups? Carolina, which is a legit defense, we talked about that. The Jets, I will say, that is probably going to start to trend more in favor of receivers now that there's no Sauce Gardner and Quentin Williams. But, teams might not even need to throw against the Jets, let's be honest. And then you get the Tennessee Titans, who obviously L'Jarius Sneed with that team. So, look, I would be looking to sell him if you have other options. Definitely look at what's available in your league. Okay, we talked about some negatives. Why don't we go to the positives? We're going to just fire through some positive buys because I don't want to just be negative Nancy here. So we talked about some of these this week, but to highlight, Chase Brown, one of the better buys. He's on a bye week this week. So if you can buy him from, it's a lot of buys. If you can buy him from a player who desperately needs someone to start, then it's a good time to do so. In the fantasy playoffs, they get Baltimore, Miami, Arizona. I like those matchups. How about Aaron Jones? Well, when Aaron Jones came into the game last Sunday, he was the dominant running back for this team. Jordan Mason was more of an afterthought, and they say he's healthy, even though he did not practice on Wednesday. He has a great matchup in the fantasy playoffs. Dallas, the Giants, and then, of course, Detroit. We don't like Detroit, but Dallas and New York, that's a beautiful matchup for him. How about Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson? I don't think Stevenson's going to go away when he's back and healthy. He will still be a part of this offense. Not only do they have a great schedule leading up into the playoffs, but even in the fantasy playoffs, they get Buffalo, Baltimore, and the Jets. So some decent matchups there to chase. I like both of those running backs as buys at the current cost. All right, how about wide receivers? Well, Jefferson and Addison are two names that I feel confident going out there and buying. I think we saw enough from JJ McCarthy to tell us that he's going to be able to sustain this offense. You look at the schedule in the playoffs, they get Dallas in week 15, then the Giants, and then the Lions, who they just beat anyway, and they showed how competent they can be through the air. And that's in Minnesota, by the way, versus Detroit in week 17. So I will go out and buy those guys. I also really like Jalen Waddle as a buy. He's just been so consistent. We've already heard from this team that they have no intentions to bench Tua Tagovailoa. They have no intentions to fire Mike McDaniel in season. So then you go out and you look at his schedule in the playoffs: Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Tampa Bay. Can't think of a single reason why the Dolphins would not be needing to throw in every single one of those matchups. So I'd love to go out and trade for him there. I also, at the tight end position, think you should go trade for Sam Laporta and Tyler Warren. These are two guys that can be unquestioned starters for you in, the fantasy playoffs. The obvious number one option at tight end for their teams, consistent throughout the year. And then their schedule and the playoffs are great. The Colts get the Seahawks, the Niners, and the Jags. Great matchups for tight ends. And then when you look at the Lions, they had the Rams, Steelers, and the Vikings. Again, a great rest of season schedule. So those are guys that I would definitely suggest to go out there and buy if you can. Well, in week 8, we won the Fast Draft weekly Quick 6 Super Slam tourney. I want to do that again. This is the lineup that we won in that week. I'm trying to get first place again. You can create your own DFS lineup over there. I'm having a ton of fun. All you got to do is download the app FastDraft. Use my promo code LAND at sign up. I'll match that deposit up to $50, and then you'll get my week 10 rankings free. You can check that out in the description. There's a comment down there I've pinned. If you have any interest, you want to have some fun, maybe your own home leagues you're not loving, but you can still have some fun with the DFS. So check that out below. All right, and to finish, here's my favorite start of the week. That is David Montgomery versus the Washington Commanders. Commanders are a middle-of-the-pack matchup for your running backs, but I don't think that accounts for all the injuries and loss of momentum they've had in the last couple weeks. They are giving up the 5th most yards per game and the 10th most total points allowed per game. DeAndre Swift went off against this defense. Javonte Williams, Kareem Hunt, they all had great days. The Lions currently have the 2nd highest implied team point total on the week at almost 29 points. Only the Buffalo Bills have more. You look at the over-under, 48.5 points, but the Lions are favorites by about 8.5 points. So you should see this team running the ball out in the second half, and I think Monty has a really great game. I'd play him over Breece Hall, Ken Walker, Charbonnet, Marks, Vidal, Tyrone Tracy, Kamara, and any of the Commander running backs. I think he gets at least 1 touchdown in this game, and I'm excited, not as a Commanders fan, but I'm excited for Montgomery owners. I appreciate you watching the video. Do me a favor, hit the like button to show some love, subscribe if you like the content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Nothing but love. Draft with me every night this week on the FastDraft app, where there are thousands of dollars to be won weekly. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at sign up to get your deposit match up to $50. That's up to 10 free entries on us. And when you finish your first DFS contest, I'll send you my weekly rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today.